Once our cake is covered in fondant, it's ready to decorate, so we need to make and attach the ribbons. I'm going to use this texture sheet to add a little bit of texture to the fondant before I cut it with the Wilton ribbon cutter tool. This is the new and improved version, by the way. Much easier to use than the older one. I'll be able to cut 3 1/2-inch wide fondant ribbons all at the same time by using the straight cutting wheels separated by the 1/2-inch spacer rings. This is going to save a lot of time, and hopefully all of the fondant ribbons will be nice and even. The nice thing about this newer Wilton ribbon cutter tool is that it comes with a locking ring, so you don't have to worry about filling up the cylinder with spacer rings, and it just snaps into place like that. Super easy. Now I'm just going to roll out my green fondant to an even thickness. I'm using the 1/8 of an inch spacer rings. Again, I've sped up the video because I'm not trying to bore you to death, but once I get it rolled out to where, it's a reasonable length, I'm going to use the texture sheet to make this diamond pattern. And you can either roll the rolling pin across it, or you can use a fondant smoother to press the texture onto the fondant, whichever is more comfortable for you. And then you see how I'm able to make, with one single pass, I can cut 3 1/2-inch wide fondant ribbons. Fantastic. And then I just want to apply a little bit of piping gel. You can either apply the piping gel to the back of the ribbon and then place the ribbon on your cake, or you can apply the piping gel to the cake and then place the ribbon accordingly. Try both ways. Do whatever is most comfortable for you. And I did not pre-measure these ribbons to make sure they were the exact length. I just kind of decided to wing it, so you can easily cut them if they're too long. So I have kind of a general idea of where I'm going to be placing the rest of the ribbons. I'm just going to pipe some clear piping gel along the top of the cake. That'll be sort of my placement guide. And when I'm adding the additional ribbons, notice that I cut the ends so that they lie flush with the center ribbon. This is so you don't have a big buildup of fondant right there in the middle of the cake where all of the ribbons come together. It's also important to remember to gently press the fondant ribbons to the cake so that you don't accidentally rub out any of your pattern or texture you may have put on them. Also, try really hard not to stretch the fondant as you're picking it up and placing it on the cake. And I'm just kind of eyeballing where these fondant ribbons are going. You could certainly be more precise if you have a cake dividing wheel, or if you wanted to divide the cake more evenly ahead of time and mark where the ribbons are going to go. Now I'm going to need to put a bottom border on this cake because I have a tear in the fondant down at the base, and in order to cover up that tear, I'm going to need a wider ribbon. So I'm going to add a 1/4 inch spacer to my 1/2-inch spacer, which is going to give me a 3/4 inch strip of fondant that I'm going to use as a bottom ribbon for the cake. And here again, I'll speed up the process so that you don't have to spend your entire day watching me roll out fondant. This ribbon that's going to go around the base is a little bit longer, so I need to make sure that the pattern stays consistent. So I'm going to go ahead and texture the fondant as before, but to get this extra bit added in, I'm going to need to overlap the texture sheet on top of a bit that I've already textured, just so it keeps going and it's continuous. And then I can just cut my fondant ribbon using the cutter tool as I did before. Where that tear is in the fondant, that's going to be the back of my cake. So that's where I want this bottom ribbon to start and stop. And so that it sticks to the cake and stays in place, I'm just going to put some piping gel down around the base, and I'm going to even up the edges there just so it's easier to handle. And when I'm attaching the fondant ribbon, I want to make sure it's level, but then I also want to overlap it a little bit right here and then cut through both layers of fondant where it's overlapped, and the seam should be pretty close. You should be able to just kind of pat it and smooth it a little bit with your finger. And there's the cake.